What if the reason you didn't get the last job you interviewed for had, like, absolutely nothing to do with your qualifications?
Oh man, that is a terrifying thought.
Right, but what if it had everything to do with a four-letter word that you didn't even realize you said? I mean, think about that for a second. You have the degree, you put in the hours, you know the software, you have all the references.
You're completely prepared.
Exactly.
Okay.
But then you walk out of the room, and a week later, you get that generic email saying they, went in another direction. So today, we are exploring the idea that the gap between being perfectly qualified and actually being chosen isn't really about the substance of your experience.
No, it's not.
Right? It's entirely about the specific, almost invisible packaging of the words you use to describe it. We're diving into a fascinating short excerpt from a piece titled Van Bun Duk Dan, and it's all about this massive impact of upgrading to C1 level vocabulary.
Yeah, and the frustrating reality for, well, so many professionals is that they spend years, literally years, building their technical skills, but they completely neglect the linguistic vehicle they use to deliver those skills,
Yeah, the delivery system.
Exactly. We just assume that if we have the right answer, the actual words we use to convey it don't really matter. But human cognition simply doesn't work that way.
It really doesn't.
We are constantly, subconsciously evaluating people, not just on what they say, but on the precise semantic weight of how they say it.
I was actually thinking about this in terms of photography. Like, when you take a picture, whether you're using some massive DSLR camera or just, pulling your phone out of your pocket, the absolute bare minimum requirement is that the picture needs to be in focus.
Right, obviously.
Because if the lens is blurry, the photo is garbage.
Yeah.
I mean, you could be standing in front of the most spectacular sunset over the Grand Canyon, but if the focus is off, it's just this smeared gray rectangle, right? The subject is completely lost.
Because without focus, there is no recognizable data. It's a binary state. The image either transmits reality or it totally fails to transmit reality. And in language, grammar basically operates as that focus.
Yes. But, getting the lens perfectly in focus is not the end of photography. It's literally just the baseline.
Yeah, just the start.
Right. Once the edges are sharp, you certainly have to contend with lighting. You have to contend with color grading and shadows and contrast, because the focus makes the picture visible, but the lighting is what actually makes a picture captivating to look at.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Like a perfectly focused photograph taken in some, sterile fluorescent lit office is still going to look flat and forgettable.
And that brings us to the core mission of our deep dive today. This source text revolves around this idea of upgrading to what linguists call C1 level vocabulary.
And we should probably clarify what C1 actually means in this context, because it's really crucial to understanding the leap that our main character in the text is trying to make.
Yeah, break that down for us. Sure. So C1 refers to the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, or the CEFR. It's this globally recognized standard. It starts at A1, which is absolute beginner, like you can say hello and order a coffee.
Right, the basics.
Yeah. Then B1 and B2 are intermediate. At that level, you can live in the country, hold a job, communicate your ideas pretty clearly. And most people actually stop at B2 because their focus, to use your analogy, is sharp. Their grammar is fine.
They can be understood.
Exactly. But C1 is advanced. It's where you stop just transmitting data and you start manipulating nuance, tone, and, professional authority.
And that is exactly where we find our case study today from the text, this job seeker named Daniel. So Daniel is stuck in that B2 plateau. He's preparing for a major job interview, and he's rehearsed every single answer.
He's done the work.
Oh, totally. He's run through all the behavioral questions, the STAR method, all of it. And he isn't making grammatical mistakes. But the text notes he has this lingering unease. It explicitly says, quote, something didn't feel right.
Which is such a real feeling.
Right. So he takes his rehearsed answers to his mentor. And the mentor listens carefully, she smiles, and she diagnoses his problem in just one sentence. She tells him, your grammar is good, but your vocabulary is too ordinary.
Wow. And the psychology of Daniel's unease there is just so relatable. It's like this uncanny valley of professional competence.
The uncanny valley, yeah.
Right, because he knows he isn't doing anything technically wrong, but his intuition is screaming that he isn't doing anything powerfully right either.
Yes.
When you make a grammatical error, it's obvious, Someone can just circle it with a red pen. But when your vocabulary is just ordinary, there is no red squiggly line under it. The failure is completely invisible to you, even though the hiring manager feels it instantly.
And look at the mentor's reaction in the text. She listened carefully and smiled. Like,
Yeah.
she doesn't panic. She doesn't tell him to scrap his whole presentation.
Right. It's not a crisis.
No.
Yeah.
That smile indicates that Daniel's problem is an entirely predictable rite of passage. She recognizes he has built the foundation, the good grammar, and he is just, well, sitting in a room with bad lighting.
Yeah, and it's a rite of passage because our educational system prioritizes the focus.
Right.
We are tested on grammatical correctness, not really on rhetorical impact.
That's a huge point.
So millions of people enter the workforce speaking an incredibly functional, but honestly completely uninspiring brand of English.
Mm-hmm.
The mentor's smile is that realization that Daniel is just like a few minor tweaks away from unlocking a completely different level of professional perception.
I do struggle with this a bit, though. Let's look at it from the perspective of a, hyper-practical hiring manager, maybe someone in tech or in engineering.
Okay, play devil's advocate.
Yeah. If the primary goal of language is to transmit information efficiently, why is ordinary suddenly a bad thing? Like, if Daniel says, I did this project and it worked, and the interviewer understands exactly what he means, shouldn't clarity be the only metric?
I see where you're going.
I mean, we live in an era where people wear hoodies to board meetings, right? They
Yeah.
communicate in Slack emojis. Why do we need to dress up our language? Doesn't trying to sound sophisticated run the risk of sounding, I don't know, antiquated?
Well, it's a fair point, but I think it conflates casual culture with a lack of rigor. Even in a tech company where the CEO wears a hoodie, the underlying evaluations of competence, leadership, and strategic thinking are incredibly rigorous.
Okay, that makes sense.
In a job interview or a major client pitch, you are never just transmitting data. If they only wanted data, they would literally just read your resume and skip the interview entirely, right?
Yeah, that's true. The interview has to serve another purpose.
Exactly. The interview exists for relational and evaluative communication. They are scanning your language for secondary signals. They're asking themselves, how does this person process information? How do they handle pressure? Can I confidently put them in front of our most important client?
So the words are doing double duty. They are delivering the facts of your work history,
Yeah.
but they also serving as a live demonstration of your cognitive bandwidth.
Exactly that. In a highly competitive environment, ordinary language just makes you blend in. It makes you sound like the 6 other candidates who interviewed that exact same morning.
You become forgettable.
Right. Sophistication isn't about sounding like some 19th century aristocrat. It's about precision. The mentor isn't telling Daniel his casual words are morally wrong or anything. She is telling him that ordinary words are a missed opportunity. They are leaving his true potential hidden.
Okay, so if ordinary language renders Daniel invisible, then his survival in this interview relies on diagnosing exactly which everyday words are betraying him.
Yes, he needs an audit.
And the mentor doesn't just give him vague advice. She doesn't just say, be more confident. She gives him 4 very specific surgical linguistic swaps. And we're going to break down all 4 of these because the psychology underneath them is just fascinating.
It really is.
So, the mentor starts by targeting how Daniel expresses his opinions. She tells him that instead of saying, I think this is a good idea, he needs to say, I believe this approach is effective. Now, on the surface, both sentences mean you agree with the plan. But the energetic shift is massive.
It fundamentally alters his professional identity in the room. Let's look at the mechanics of the original phrase. I think this is a good idea. The verb to think is cognitive, sure, but in casual conversation, it's often used to express uncertainty or just a fleeting state.
Like, I think it might rain.
Right, or I think I left my keys in the car. When you pair it with business strategy, like, I think this is a good idea, it sounds like a subjective guess. It just lacks gravity.
It kind of sounds like you're weighing in on what toppings to get on a pizza, right? Yeah,
Right.
pepperoni is a good idea.
Exactly.
It's entirely reactive. But the swap to, I believe this approach is effective, changes the entire center of gravity. Moving from think to believe actually roots the speaker. You aren't just processing a passing thought. You have planted your flag in a professional stance.
And this ties into a psychological concept known as the confidence heuristic.
Oh, the confidence heuristic.
Yeah. When humans are presented with new information, especially in a complex or uncertain environment like business, we subconsciously look for cues to determine how much weight we should give that information.
We're looking for shortcuts.
Exactly. If a speaker uses tentative language like, I think, maybe, sort of, the listener's brain interprets that linguistic hesitation as a lack of actual competence regarding the subject matter.
Wow.
Conversely, when a speaker uses declarative, rooted language like I believe, the listener uses that projected confidence as a proxy for the quality of the idea. So Daniel isn't changing his idea at all. He is changing the heuristic cue he gives the hiring manager.
That is wild. And it's not just the verb either. The transition from good idea to approach is effective, is where the actual business strategy comes in, I think. Because an idea is abstract, like a light bulb going off. But an approach implies a methodology. It implies a sequence of actionable steps. And replacing the word good with effective completely changes the metric of success.
That is the critical pivot right there. Good is a subjective, almost moral judgment. Like, a movie can be good, a cup of coffee can be good.
Right.
But effective is a measurable, outcome-driven metric. It actually implies a return on investment.
So if you are sitting across from a hiring manager and you say, I believe this approach is effective, you are no longer acting as a subordinate who's just waiting for instructions. You are adopting the vocabulary of leadership. You are speaking the language of results and architecture.
Which is precisely the threshold between an entry-level mindset and a management mindset. Entry-level employees have good ideas,
Yeah.
Leaders champion effective approaches.
I love that.
The mentor is literally teaching Daniel to verbally dress for the job he wants.
Okay, so if establishing a strategy for the future is the first step, the next place an interviewer will inevitably look is how you contextualize your past.
Oh, absolutely. The resume walkthrough.
Right. And that brings us to the second shift in the text. Daniel's original instinct for describing his background was to say, I got experience. But the mentor completely rewrites this, swapping it to, I gained valuable experience.
Yeah, the verb to get is arguably the most insidious, pervasive word in the English language.
It's everywhere.
It is a universal catch-all utility word, and it is almost entirely passive. You get a cold, you get a package in the mail, you get a flat tire.
Stuff that just happens to you.
Exactly. It implies that the universe simply handed something to you or inflicted something upon you without any active participation on your part whatsoever.
When I hear someone say, I got experience at my last job, the mental image it paints is someone just standing in an office building for 3 years while experience accidentally rained down on them.
Yes.
Like, it implies they were just a warm body occupying a chair waiting for the clock to strike 5.
Exactly. It triggers an external locus of control.
Locus of control. Remind me how that works.
Sure. So in psychology, locus of control refers to how much agency you believe you have over your life. Someone with an external locus believes things happen to them. Someone with an internal locus believes they make things happen.
Okay.
So I got experience signals an external locus, but when the mentor swaps that to I gained, the narrative completely flips. You don't accidentally gain ground in a competition, right? You don't accidentally gain mastery over a subject.
You have to work for it.
Right. Gained requires intentional forward momentum. It positions Daniel as an active agent who consciously extracted skills from his environment.
And we also have to unpack the addition of the word valuable in that phrase. He doesn't just say he gained experience, he explicitly calls it valuable experience.
Yes, setting the worth.
Because I think a lot of people walk into interviews assuming their resume just speaks for itself. They think, well, I worked at Google for 2 years. Obviously, the interviewer knows that was valuable. But you can never assume the other person is doing the work of assigning worth to your history. You literally have to tell them how to perceive it.
This is a classic anchoring bias. In cognitive psychology, anchoring is a bias where an individual depends way too heavily on an initial piece of information offered to make subsequent judgments.
So you drop the anchor first.
Exactly. By injecting the word valuable right at the beginning of the sentence, Daniel sets the anchor. Before the interviewer can even evaluate the specifics of his past roles, Daniel has already framed the lens through which they will view it.
He's preemptively grading his own paper.
He is. He is instructing them. The time I spent was well spent, and I possess something of high worth.
It's just an incredible display of professional self-worth. If you don't assign value to your own labor, the person sitting across from the desk trying to negotiate your salary certainly isn't going to do it for you.
Definitely not. And this naturally transitions into how we discuss times when that labor wasn't easy. You've claimed your past experience, you've set your value, but eventually, in every single interview, you will be asked about a time you failed or a time things went wrong.
Oh yeah, the classic behavioral question. Tell me about a time you faced adversity.
Everyone's favorite.
Right. And this leads to the third linguistic shift in our text. When practicing his answer about a tough project, Daniel originally said the project was hard. The mentor strikes that from the record and replaces it with the project was challenging.
Such a subtle difference, but so important.
Right, because if you look these up in a thesaurus, they are listed as synonyms. But the emotional intelligence behind these two words places them in completely different universes.
The emotional divergence between hard and challenging is profound. The word hard sounds like a dead end. It sounds like a lamentation, you know?
Yeah, like you're just complaining.
Exactly. When you describe a task as hard, the semantic focus is entirely on your fatigue, your struggle, and your pain. It basically conveys victimization. You crash into a brick wall, and it hurt.
A wall is exactly what it feels like. It just stops you. There is no momentum at all in the word hard. But a challenge is like a rock climbing wall. It is explicitly designed to be scaled.
Oh, that's a brilliant analogy.
When you reframe a difficult project as challenging, you take the difficulty and turn it into a test of skill. And because you are sitting in the interview calmly talking about it, the unstated conclusion is that it was a test of skill you successfully navigated.
Right, you survived it and you're better for it. This is the linguistic manifestation of Carol Dweck's growth mindset.
Oh yeah, growth mindset.
Yeah, a fixed mindset sees difficulty as a permanent roadblock, like, it was hard, therefore I reached the limit of my abilities. But a growth mindset sees difficulty as a mechanism for expansion. It was challenging, therefore it required me to elevate my skills.
And hiring managers are obviously listening for that.
Oh, they are acutely attuned to this. They know every job will have miserable, difficult weeks. They are listening for clues about your psychological resilience.
So if you say the project was hard, the hiring manager hears. When things go wrong, this person will complain and get drained.
Exactly.
But if you say the project was challenging, they hear. When things go wrong, this person will get motivated.
It's almost a stoic framing, really. You cannot control the difficulty of the market or the client or the project itself, but you retain absolute control over how you categorize that difficulty.
That's powerful.
By upgrading a four-letter word to a longer one, Daniel projects a level of emotional maturity and resilience that is just highly sought after in corporate leadership.
Okay, so navigating adversity is critical,
Hmm.
but unless you are, like, a solo entrepreneur operating in a vacuum, you're going to be navigating that adversity alongside other people.
Right, you're usually part of a team.
Exactly. And how Daniel framed his teamwork was the fourth and final thing his mentor flagged. Daniel's original instinct was to say, I helped my team. The mentor upgrades this entirely, teaching him to say, I contributed to the team's success.
Out of all four shifts, this one might actually be the most critical for defining your role and your agency within an organization.
Really. More than the others.
I think so, yeah. The verb helped is polite, it's pro-social, but in a corporate environment, it positions the speaker as an assistant, a subordinate, or just a well-meaning bystander.
Yeah, when you say, I helped, it implies someone else was driving the car. Someone else owned the outcome, and you just, like, occasionally checked the GPS or handed them a coffee.
It invokes the diffusion of responsibility. I helped means you did some tasks, sure, but you weren't ultimately accountable for whether the project lived or died. It minimizes your footprint.
You're dodging the spotlight.
Right. But when you say, I contributed to the team's success, you undergo a radical repositioning.
Let's break down the mechanics of that specific phrasing, because there's a lot going on there. First, the word contributed. A contribution implies that you brought a specific, unique asset or skill to the table that the group was otherwise lacking.
You weren't just a pair of hands.
Exactly. You didn't just provide generic help. You provided a necessary component of the architecture.
And second, look at the object of the sentence, to the team's success. You aren't just contributing to a task, you are explicitly linking your personal effort to the broader positive victory of the group.
Which is what they really care about.
Right. This signals to a hiring manager that you have a macro view of the business. You aren't just keeping your head down and hammering nails. You understand that the goal is to build a cathedral. You are aligning your micro actions with macro outcomes.
It claims ownership. You are no longer just an assistant. You are a vital catalyst for the win. And what is so striking to me about all four of these shifts, from opinion to strategy, passive to active, complaint to opportunity, and assistance to impact, is just how mundane the vocabulary actually is.
It really is. It's everyday language.
Yeah. We didn't learn any bizarre, archaic Latin phrases. We didn't break out flashcards for words nobody uses. We just tightened the screws on perfectly normal English to make it carry a significantly heavier load.
Which brings us to the real-world application here. The text doesn't just leave us with rhetorical theory, which is great. It shows us the immediate aftermath of what happens when Daniel actually deploys these upgraded phrases inside the interview room.
Right. The payoff.
Mhm.
The text provides a very specific detail about the hiring manager's reaction. Daniel makes these small linguistic tweaks, he delivers his answers, and the text notes that the manager, quote, nodded with interest.
And analyzing that nonverbal cue is vital. The manager didn't just nod in comprehension, as if checking off a box that said Daniel was functionally literate.
Like, okay, I understand your sentence.
Right, they nodded with interest. This proves that the precise vocabulary choices actively engaged the interviewer's cognition. The manager was intellectually stimulated by the specific way Daniel was framing his reality.
It's the camera analogy playing out in real time. The grammar provided the focus, but the vocabulary provided the lighting. The presentation of the image is what actually arrested their attention.
That's exactly it.
And then the text delivers its core thesis, which is a brilliant summation of everything we've just unpacked. It explicitly states his English hadn't become longer, it had simply become more sophisticated.
That single sentence completely dismantles the most common illusion people have about intelligence and language.
Oh, totally.
We have this deep-seated, often academically ingrained assumption that sounding smart requires speaking in massive, convoluted paragraphs.
Word salads.
Right, word salads. We think we need to use $10 words to prove our worth.
Mm.
We equate volume and complexity with sophistication, but the text explicitly refutes that. Daniel's sentences didn't get longer. The efficiency of his communication was retained, but the impact was multiplied tenfold.
But I have to put myself in the shoes of someone listening to this right now who might be feeling a bit of apprehension.
Okay, what's the concern?
Sure. Well, if I decide to take my everyday speech and I start artificially swapping on my ordinary words for these C1 strategic phrases, like if I start telling my spouse, I believe this approach is effective when we are trying to decide how to load the dishwasher.
Oh, that won't go over well.
Right. Is there a danger I might come off sounding robotic or incredibly pretentious? Like I swallowed a corporate buzzword dictionary and I'm trying way too hard to project authority.
That is a very valid fear. It's actually the primary trap people fall into when they try to upgrade their language without understanding the underlying mechanics. They end up sounding like a walking LinkedIn post.
Exactly. A walking LinkedIn post.
But the text itself anticipates this trap and provides the defense against it. The text concludes with a defining rule for the listener. Sophisticated English isn't about using difficult words. It's about choosing better ones. That distinction completely redefines the goal.
Better words, not difficult words.
Right. What actually makes language sound pretentious or robotic? Pretentiousness usually stems from using overly complex, unnatural, or obscure words purely for the sake of demonstrating that you know them.
Like using utilize instead of use for no reason.
Yes, exactly. It's using a 5-syllable word when a 2-syllable word would be clearer. It creates friction for the listener, but look closely at the mentor's swaps. Effective is not a rare, obscure word. Challenging is a word children understand. Valuable is incredibly common.
They're just normal words.
They aren't pretentious, they are just strictly more precise. They are sharper tools.
So it's not about decorating your language with fancy intellectual ornaments. It's about upgrading the engine itself. You aren't pasting big words over your ideas to hide them. You are choosing words that actually carry the exact emotional, psychological, and strategic weight you intend to convey.
If you use the word challenging instead of hard, you aren't showing off your vocabulary to the hiring manager. You are accurately describing a specific psychological framing of a difficult task.
The precision is the point.
Exactly. The precision of the framing is what makes it sophisticated, not the rarity of the vocabulary word itself. Sophistication thrives on clarity, whereas pretension hides behind complexity.
And that concept leads perfectly into the final line of our source material. The text ends with a direct call to action. Follow for more C1 vocabulary. Now, on the surface, that is just a standard social media sign-off.
Right.
But underneath it, there is a remarkably empowering implication.
There really is.
By saying follow for more, the text is implying that this level of sophistication, this ability to walk into a boardroom, speak with C1 level precision, and command the interest of everyone at the table is not some innate magical talent. You aren't just born with it or doomed without it.
It frames articulation as a systematic, highly trainable skill. It suggests that linguistic sophistication is essentially an algorithm of word swaps.
An algorithm, yeah.
There is a finite set of these upgrades. If you simply learn them, understand the psychology behind them, and practice deploying them, anyone can radically elevate their professional presence. It really democratizes the entire concept of being articulate.
It's like being handed the cheat codes to human perception. Anyone, including you listening right now on your commute or at your desk, can learn to audit their own speech patterns.
Absolutely.
You can literally record yourself practicing an interview answer, listen back to it, and actively hunt for those ordinary words. You can ask yourself, where am I saying got when I could signal an internal locus of control by saying gained? Where am I saying helped when I could claim agency by saying contributed?
It shifts the entire burden of professional communication from I need to naturally possess eloquence to I simply need to be strategically prepared.
That is a huge relief.
It is. Daniel wasn't naturally eloquent in that stressful moment. He was just willing to adopt the strategic tools his mentor provided. And the result was immediate and tangible. A hiring manager who stopped just listening to the data and started nodding with genuine interest at the person delivering it.
This has been such a dense exploration of an incredibly short text, so let's synthesize the journey we've been on today for you guys. We started with Daniel, sitting in his anxiety, perfectly prepared, but fundamentally uneasy.
Right, the B2 plateau.
We explored the grammar trap, the realization that having your lens in perfect focus and making zero technical mistakes does not guarantee you are making a memorable impact.
We then went under the hood with the mentor's precise linguistic scalpels. We saw how moving from the fleeting thought of I think to the rooted conviction of I believe shifts you from holding an opinion to holding a strategy, leveraging that confidence heuristic.
And we analyzed how swapping the passive reception of got for the intentional acquisition of gained signals an internal locus of control, taking ownership of your valuable history.
We also looked at the immense emotional intelligence required to replace the dead-end complaint of a hard project with the growth mindset opportunity of a challenging one.
We broke down how helping diffuses your responsibility and casts you as an assistant while contributing to success claims agency and makes you a vital catalyst for a macro-level win.
And finally, we saw the ultimate payoff of this precision, the interviewer's active engagement. We proved that true sophistication isn't about padding your sentences with long, difficult words to sound artificially smart.
It's about choosing better, sharper words to be undeniably effective.
The overarching lesson of Daniel's story is that your vocabulary is the primary lens through which the professional world judges your competence, your emotional maturity, and your leadership potential. And you have total control over that lens.
So the next time you are preparing for a critical meeting, a performance review, a salary negotiation, or a massive job interview, I want you to remember Daniel.
Don't just check your grammar.
Do not just run a spell check on your presentation. You need to run a rigorous vocabulary audit. Hunt down those ordinary, passive, invisible words that might be quietly selling you short. Swap them out for words that actually carry the true weight of your experience.
Because as we've explored today, the margin between blending into the background and standing out as the obvious choice is sometimes just a handful of carefully chosen words.
Which leaves us with one final provocative thought to mull over as we wrap up today's deep dive. If we can completely alter how our competence, our resilience, and our fundamental value are perceived by another human being just by swapping out 4 ordinary words for better ones.
Oh, this is a great question.
How much of your true professional potential is currently being hidden by the default ordinary language you use every single day? Remember, a picture can be perfectly in focus, but until you fix the lighting, no one is ever going to stop and look. Upgrade your lighting. Upgrade your words. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.